Today's demonstration is going to be around B2W Track. Track is one of the elements within the operational suite of products. It sits right alongside B2W Schedule and B2W Maintain. These are all three standalone elements that are uniquely built on one SQL database. So as you add additional products, they all speak to each other, they all share information in real time. B2W Track is an analytical tool that was designed so that we can let the employees in the field collect their data electronically and in real time get a comparison to the way the job was bid. There's no waiting for a week, 2 weeks, or longer to see how things are going. It's real time, day by day, so that you know exactly how you're doing in the field compared to the way you bid the job. The way that we're going to be running the demonstration today, we'll go into the jobs area and show the back-end job and the budgetary information that's sitting there waiting on the guys to collect their data in the field to get that real-time analysis. Then we'll go to the field so we can show you what a field log and a work log looks like. Those are the interfaces that we're going to hand to the guys in the field for them to collect their data. And then during that process, we'll also talk about error checking and versioning and customizations, which the field log and work log is very customizable in a lot of ways. We'll then move through the approval process. The approval process is in place because at the end of the day, we have the ability to push information such as employee hours and equipment hours out so that you can import that into your accounting system to avoid that manual entry. We'll end up the day inside reports within the job so you can see how the information all comes together in real-time reportable information. So let's get started. Okay, for the jobs area, there are a few different ways that you can create a job in B2W operations. One way is to create it from the estimating system if you're using B2W Estimate. We're going to start there because I want to show you quickly that process. So I'm going to open up B2W Estimate, and for those folks who have this, then you would go into an estimate that you're working on. When you win this estimate or win this bid, you'll go into your accounting system and set up a job, and that'll create a job number here that you can now use the system to export the detail of this estimate out into a file for your accounting system. We don't need that. To send information from here over to operations, we build all of our own products. We know how to make them all talk to each other. So really, it is this button that takes the budgetary information electronically and creates the job automatically in the operations suite. But one quick thing that I did want to mention, owning both products, we are sharing information from operations over into the estimating system to help the estimator. A couple different ways that we do that. When I go into the estimate detail tab, if I go here and this is a job that's already out in the field and running, I can right click and I can actually launch Track from here. The general information, the estimate item, which would be the common excavation, or even the tracking information, which is that comparative analysis between how the guys are doing and how it was bid. Another way that we're sharing information is, let's say that this is a new bid and you're about to take this excavation crew and put them into this item at 500 cubic yards in a day. Well, it would be nice to have true production values from the field to give you real-time knowledge, and that's what View Production History provides. When I click this, it shows jobs that are being ran, that are finished, but it shows me for that crew type, how well have they actually done in the field. And my analysis here shows they've never hit 500 cubic yards in a day. So I can choose to average across the jobs. It'll give me a rate. Or I can come in and say, I want to take the highs and the lows and I want to avoid the rainouts. That way it will give me a nice real-time production rate that I can pop into the bid. So we are sharing information back over into the estimating system with the use of both Track and Estimate. All right, back on track here. Let's go into the jobs area. Here in the jobs area, these are all the active jobs that you're running at any given time. We've talked about estimate being a way to create a job. We also have a CSV template that we'll provide that you can import. Even some of the accounting systems allow us to go out and grab jobs and pull in here as well. Let's go into a job and kind of show you. You'll notice there's a series of tabs across the top, And for a new job, this is holding all the budgetary information, waiting on the guys to collect their data in the field. The general information holds the job number that corresponds with the accounting system. You can create attachments here down below. At the top here, you'll see for estimate items, these are the items that came from the way that you bid the work. Tracking accounts are different. These are the buckets of costs that you're going to hand off to the guys in the field to track the job the way you want them to track it, which may be differently than the way you bid it. My example is going to be a little bit of consolidation. You'll notice that I have excavation on a couple different items, paving, pipe, and different items. When I sent this job over from the estimate, I told it to combine like work to make it a little bit easier and more streamlined for the guys in the field. So I've taken these 12 or so estimate items, and when it pushed it over, it consolidated like work. All my asphalt's been rolled up with quantity and cost, concrete, excavation. So for these production accounts, it gives the guys a little bit less on their plate to collect their time and effort, but I still get that apples to apples comparison. You can also create what we call overhead accounts. This is non-production, like safety meeting time and travel and things like that as well. Now, this goes both ways. You may have one item for, say, a lump sum bid, but have multiple tasks underneath it. Then you may have more tracking accounts than you do items. So it's all about how you want to track it over and above the way you bid it. You can create production targets. These are ways that you can set up expectations for the guys in the field. I'm going to show you an example of that when we get into a field log. Materials will come over from the estimate or on the import. Subs and vendors can be stored. As you create your field logs, all the activities on that particular job are going to be here. Change orders can come in many different ways, imported, sent in from the estimating system, or even again, some accounting systems let us pull that in. And then time and material, this is where you can actually set up rates if you're doing any time and material, extra or force account work. And that information can also be collected on the field log, which I'll be showing you an example of that for that extra work that is really not part of the production work that you're doing here. It's something extra that happens in the field. So initially, you'll see you have your estimated quantities. If there's any change orders before this job starts, you now have change order quantities, but you'll notice there is no reported quantity. So this is a raw job where nobody's entered any information. We have the estimated cost, but we don't have any reported cost. That's again because the guys have not recorded anything on this job. So this is the raw job, just giving you some perspective on what you're going to see when you get into a field log. So now let's do that. Let's take this information and let's go to the field and show you how they're going to track their time and effort against it. So now let's talk about how the employees in the field are going to collect their field data using B2W Track. The first thing that we're going to look at is called a field log. The field log is the electronic solution that we're going to hand off to the foreman or the PM, basically whoever's collecting the data for the crew. And then again, that can be employee hours, equipment hours, production quantities, lots of things that they can collect. If you create the field log here on the browser, you do need a connection back to your server. But we're going to first start off looking at our tablet application to do that. The tablet application needs no internet connection at all. So I'm going to pull mine over. So this is my field log, and you can use iPads, Android tablets, and again, no expensive data plans that you have to have. So when an employee logs in, they'll log in with their pen. That pen identifies them for this device, and there's tons of security parameters that you can set up per user on, say, what jobs they can see, what field logs. And on the right-hand side, as I mentioned, we also have an approval process that we'll be looking at, and you can see the status of the field logs. Now, lots of ways you can create them. You can make copies. You can start from scratch. You can pull from our scheduling system. But I've got one at the top there in draft that I've already created that I copied over. So this is what a field log will look like. Down the left-hand side are the sections that I have visible for this foreman. More about that in just a second. I first want to take you to where the guys are really going to spend the bulk of their time, and that's our grid view. The grid view allows the employees to come in and very quickly put their production quantities, employee, and equipment hours all in one spot. And that copy did everything I told it to do. It copied the job or jobs that I was working on. It copied the people. It copied the equipment. It brought in the cost or phase codes with your description of the work, and it zeroes out all the quantities and hours. I say that, but there's two quantities there. These are examples of those production targets that I mentioned. So this is where you can go into the job and you can establish expectations per scope of work and show that to the guys in the field when they open up their field log. Up here on the right upper corner, the add button allows them to take this copy and make changes to it if they need to. So if they're going to take this crew to, say, a different job in the afternoon, they can go into the jobs drop down, grab a job and throw it on here. If they're going to do additional work or maybe not doing excavation, doing something else, they can go into those production accounts and grab what they need to do. Time and material will come back to. They can add additional employees, equipment. So basically they're taking the copy that they were really quickly made and now they can make changes to make it day specific. Very touch sensitive. If I need to put my quantities in, just tap the screen. I can put in, did 400 cubic yards there and maybe 130 there. And then this is where there's a few different ways that you can enter in the hours. If you want to, say you've got, these guys are kind of bouncing everywhere, you want to broadcast the hours across multiple scopes of work, you can highlight those scopes of work here. And then you can say, well, they all spent 5 and 5 and so did my equipment. And there very quickly, I've got my daily quantities, my employee hours, and my equipment hours. But you can be very specific if you choose. Come in and put they spent more time over here and less time over here. That way you're appropriating the hours for the appropriate costing in the background and also to get the right hours over to accounting. There's also under the covers, each of those validation prompts at the top have multiple warnings that you control. It can be a hard warning that says they have to fix the issue before they can finish to submit it. It can be a soft warning. We even do cross field log checks to make sure that you haven't put the same guy on 2 different field logs in the same given day at the same time. So this is the grid view where they'll spend the bulk of their time. Some of the other things that you can do to make it your own. Let's go back out to the main page. Down that left-hand side, as I mentioned, this is where you can add additional sections, hide sections. There's multiple different sections that you could open up. In fact, I'm going to change where it says business unit here. I'm going to add in the business unit that has all the sections involved. So these are all the things that we can do, all the way from the grid view you looked at. Attachments lets us take photos with the camera interface here. You can get into time and material, overhead, that non-production work, employees, equipment, material tracking, subcontractors, trucking, miscellaneous costs like fees and permits and things like that. So you can expose, in this case, the version that you want this guy to see. So you can even have versions, now you can rename any section. You can go in and really retype into there and change that to anything you want. You can change any field, the terminology. So there is a way that you can even create, say, a Spanish version. It's not a translator. Someone would have to go in and physically go in and change the verbiage on each of those fields, but that is possible for you. And then, say, time and material work. A lot of folks are doing extra work, so they need time and material work. So you could actually even start from the grid view and say one of your customers said, go knock down a building. You would add, go back to time and material, pick the appropriate account, and add the hours in for, say, Adam and the backhoe went over there for a couple hours and did the extra work. And at this point, now we have the hours that we can push back for accounting for both production and your extra time and material work. But when you hit the menu button, if you need a signature, you now have a new prompt there. So I can choose to sign time and material, and this creates a report for all of the T&M work that was done for the day. I can hit sign. I can hide dollar values if I choose to, but it creates a nice report that you can go down, you can enter notes on. You can have me as a company foreman or whatever, put my signature in there. but hand it over to your customer, they sign it off, and that becomes a saved PDF back in that attachments area. So lots of things that you can do really to make this your own. You can even create your own custom fields. If you look over on the right-hand side where I've got the weather field, you can actually go in, and this is a checklist, a section that I created from scratch. It's sunny and it's hot today. Did you have a safety meeting? Lots of different field styles that you can create. And then here, take 5. Yeah, we talked about that and that today. These can be made mandatory as well. So when the guys go in at the end of the day and they choose to validate and submit, not only will it check for system errors, it'll also check to see if you've got any custom fields in any of those sections that need to be filled out. And I know some of our folks have voiced they need to have employee signatures. I can even go in and you can set it up. You'll notice there's a signed time card prompt here. I can go in and hit the button. You can create questions that have to be addressed. So did you get lunch today? Did you attend a safety meeting? Those have to be answered before the employee can come down and put in their signature. Last thing I want to show you today, now that time card has been saved back on the server, but the last thing I want to show you as far as what's on the field log is the summary view. This goes back to one of the reasons that I mentioned that why we designed Track as a whole. People were not getting this type of feedback on how they were doing in the field, sometimes for a week or longer. I'm going to flip my tablet so you can see during the orientation, it'll readjust itself. But in this summary, it says for today, you should have used, based on the estimate, a little over 34 hours of labor, a little over 19 hours of equipment. It shows what you used and how far off you are. Red means you did not meet the expectations. Green means you beat those expectations. And I can hide hours, I can hide cost. I can even drill down into and say, well, how did we do on excavation versus how did we do on pipe? So this is that real-time feedback. Again, if you want the guys to see this, they can see it, or you can hide it exclusively for the foreman and he wouldn't see this information. But that's what they would be doing on the field log itself. That's where they're going to go in and collect their daily information to get it back over to the office so you can see exactly how they've done. So let's now take a look to see how the work log is created using the B2W employee app. The work logs were designed a little bit differently than the field log in that it was designed for individual employees who really never report back over to a foreman. Say your operators who are independently working or your truck drivers. Now, the employee app can be used on a phone or a tablet. So I'm going to pull mine over. I'm actually mirroring my phone. They'll go in and they will put in their PIN, and this is the home page that they'll see when they go into the employee app. They can view historic work logs. They can see rejected work logs, which are part of the approval process that we're going to be looking at here in just a minute. They're going to start their day with today's work log. When they go in, they'll be able to copy from previous work logs if they choose. They'll be able to create a work log from scratch. And that's where I'm going to go. I'm actually going to create one from scratch because it's pretty quick. When you create a work log, there's a couple different options on how you want them to put their time in to start their day and end their day. You can use a timestamp from the device that they're using, or they can do manual entry. And I'm actually going to do a timestamp for the start of my day and put in a manual time for the end of the day to show you the differences when you're reviewing the work log. They'll choose the supervisor that they're going to send it to that's going to be reviewing the work log. You'll notice here too, because I used the timestamp, it did geolocate me. And then down below, I can go in, same types of things, weather field, did you have a meeting? Those kind of custom fields that we saw before are also capable on the work log or the employee app. So I hit apply. That starts the beginning of my day. Now I come in and I need to put the activities that I'm performing as I go throughout my day. So you'll notice here when I open up the activity button, I can put in activities, I can take pictures, photos from the library, I can put in unpaid time, I can put in equipment hours, all that can happen right here on the work log. So I'm going to add an activity, and with the activity, I'm going to put the job that I'm working on while I'm doing whatever scope I'm doing. I'm going to go in and choose the scope of work, and I'm going to say that I'm going to be doing some grading on my own today. So pick the appropriate scope of work. For the first 5 hours, I'm doing the grading, and then you'll notice down below notes, voice recognition, but I can also add the equipment that I'm going to be using without having to leave the screen. I add the equipment, I go in, I need to find my grader, just a few letters there, find the grader I'm going to be working on, and hit apply. That now has started the process for the first 5 hours of my day. And then as I go throughout my day, I can put activities for different jobs and different things that I may be doing as I go through. You'll also notice the same signature panel. If you want these guys to collect signatures, they can. But as they go through their day, they would be able to continue to validate, just like you've seen on the field log. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they hit validate and submit. Same error checking. It's found out that I don't have any quantities in my grading, so I can cancel that, go into that cost or phase code or that scope of work, and say that was a couple hundred there, and then hit apply, and then go back to my work log, and then now I would push that over, validate, and submit, and get it back over to the office for approval, rejection, things like that. So it's really easy, straightforward for the independent employee to go in and put as many different activities as they have through the day, but that's how the employee app is going to work for those guys to create their work logs. Now that the field log and or work logs have been created, we need to talk about the approval process because we have that potential to send information from those daily field logs and work logs over to accounting systems. Here in the View Field Logs and Work Logs area, this is where they all live. When I go in here, this screen could potentially show every field log and every work log that's ever been done. But as a supervisor, and now I'm Elliot Myers, I really only want to see the stuff that's coming in that I need to review. So I can actually set up some filters that show the jobs that I want to see. I only want to see the submitted field logs. I don't care about the ones that have already approved, the drafts, the rejected or transferred to accounting ones. And I only want to see the stuff coming in with my name as the supervisor. So it gives me a nice short list that I can actually come here and start opening them up across the top of the screen. When I do that for the field log, this is what a field log would look like if you were creating it back here on the browser or again during the approval process. It would show all the same custom information, your weather, did you attend a safety meeting, injuries, all the same stuff that you saw. Any attachments or pictures would be there. There's the job or jobs that this foreman managed for the day, the scopes of work they performed. There's their field log or their performed quantities. If you're using those production targets, there's the target quantities and any difference there. And then down below, you'll be able to see for each scope of work, how many hours they've indicated for their employees, their equipment, material usage, whatever areas that you've had them collect while they were in the field. They can approve them, they can reject them, they can put notes on, send this back out to the user to let them know what questions they have about their daily entries, or they can really just edit things if they see fit to make things quicker to get it through the approval process. Ultimately, they would go from field log to field log to field log to enter that. There's also another screen that they can go in and look at employee weekly hours. So when they go here, they'll see for any given week all the employees, how many hours, if they've had overtime, regular time, double time. There are ways for the foreman to go in and enter regular time, overtime, double time. There are overtime rules that we have in the background, or I could simply just open this up and say for the 15-hour day that I have here on Tuesday, how do I want to allocate those hours? Do I want to put those all as overtime or some for overtime and double time? So I can reallocate the hours to push them out to accounting in the way that I see fit. Or there is an auto allocation button here that basically takes the rules that you've given the system in the background and allocates those overtime hours. So it's a good, nice review screen to see what's going on over the given week for all your employees. So that's the field log approval process. Work logs, very similar, but can be a little different because with work logs, you may have significantly more work logs than you do field logs because it's individual employees. There has been an addition here so that I can click outside the screen without having to open every one of them up. Take a look and see there's the work log. I've got signatures on it, the kind of work they did. If I want to see more information, I can open a panel to give me more detailed information. I can approve, I can reject, or if I want to see that work log, I can click right here and open it up on screen. And this is where, as I mentioned earlier, when I use the timestamp, things look a little differently. You get kind of a timestamp icon that shows I used the device's timestamp, whereas for the end of the day, I did not. And it will give you a warning. And it'll also give you the ability to drill down in and see the map and see where this was actually done. So you could actually open up a map and see where they were, in addition to seeing the latitude and longitude. And again, it indicated the job site there because I have a geofence around it and it knows that latitude and longitude is there. Signatures, did I get a signature? It's not signed. All that information is, again, the same way that I would review it. I'd review it the same here as I did with my field logs. Approval, rejection, all that information can happen here as well. So basically, that's what the approval process is going to look like. As things are approved, they can be exported over to your accounting system. So with a simple button click, it will find all of the approved work logs and field logs, or everything, and then I can choose to batch them all, send them out into a file. We have dedicated exports from multiple different accounting systems, but that way you can push the information out, such as employee hours, equipment hours, and such, out into a file to import into accounting so that you're not manually entering that data. So that's the approval process as it comes in for your field logs and work logs. Next, we're going to jump into a job and show you how all this information comes together. Now, all the information that's been collected from the field guys, whether it be on a work log or a field log, is sitting in the job to be analyzed. So we're going to go back to the jobs area, and we're going to go into one of my bigger jobs. Here, there's a series of dashboards and reports that'll help you navigate through the job. So I'm going to click on my job dashboard, and this is my production dashboard. There's cost dashboard underneath the covers if you wanted to see it. But this is telling me things like tracking account by % complete. I've got a lot of stuff that's in the startup phase. I've got some things that actually are finished up. The second graph here is for my tracking account status. It's looking at man hours and quantities the way they were estimated, and comparing those man hours and quantities to the way they're being performed. So over here, I've got quite a few scopes of work that are using less man hours than the way I bid it. Right here, I'm right in the middle where I should be, but over here, there's a fair amount of work that's not doing as well. All of the graphs and most of the reports that you'll see as you go through the system have some element of drill down. So if I want to see what is going on with the scopes of work that are 16 to 25% behind, all you have to do is drill down, and it'll bring you into those scopes of work. So it'll show you things like quantity to date, how much they've done so far on that scope of work. What were the estimated man hours that came out of the estimate for that volume of work, and how many man hours have they actually performed? And in these scopes of work, this one, I'm 123 hours over, or 21.5% over the man hours the way I bid it. And again, great information, but these dashboards allow you to drill down into very specific information. I can go into that scope of work. It'll isolate me, in this case, into that pipe install. And if I come down just a little bit, it's built a dashboard that shows me things like quantity that I estimated, what my unit cost was the way I put it together in the estimate, and based on what they've done so far, what is my accumulated unit cost being reported from the field, which is pretty good. It shows a progress summary, which shows things like quantity to date, labor hours, equipment hours. It also shows me a performance summary, which is a comparison between the estimated values and the values reported from the guys in the field for things like units per man hour, man hours per unit, hours, and cost. And again, red, I'm not meeting the expectations of the estimate. Green, I am beating those expectations. We're even doing projected hours and cost at completion that basically says if you take the remaining volume, in this case of the pipe that you need to do, and do it collectively the way you've done it so far, again, red is bad, but I can show you that yes, you may make some money on that scope of work. And then you'll be able to get down to see any cost breakdowns, change order breakdowns. And again, the immediacy of information is what's stellar in the system. It shows you as soon as that guy pushes his field log in through, you're going to be able to see the date the work was performed, the foreman that touched it, what their daily quantities were, labor hours, equipment hours, cost variances day by day, and also unit cost looks. And you can drill down into any of these field logs if you see anything of concern. All the way down to your production targets. If you're using those targets, this is where I expected them to do 125 feet that day. They did 70. And if they've done any kind of notes or annotations in the field on their scopes of work, it comes right over here so I can see what's going on. And that gets me into the weeds in a single scope of work. Let me show you back. If I go to my general information tab, we're going to come down underneath the graphs here. There's another series of reports that are job specific that I can see things like employee hours and equipment hours over any time period, material usage. There's one here called the job tracking account cost detail. And if I blow that up a little bit, because it is browser based, so I can do some changes on screen to make you see it better. If I blow that up, this is now looking at per date range, what was performed on this job and how did that scope of work and volume of work compare to the estimate. If I choose today or yesterday or last week, it will limit the report down below to just what was reported across all my foremen for this job. I can limit it to say, well, I only want to look at a specific foreman's work without any variables placed in at the top. I can blow away the top of this, and this is everything that we've done since day one, showing the scope of work, the estimated quantity, the reported quantity during the time frame that the report was ran, and taking that volume of work, what was the estimated cost compared to the cost coming from the guys in the field. And we break that down by labor cost comparison, equipment cost, all the way over to an overall cost and even cost at completion. And this one report not only shows you production work. If I scroll down a little bit here, if you're tracking any of those overhead accounts, that non-production will be able to show you, and also it gives rolled up totals for your time and material work. And you might have noticed on the home page that there are also dashboards here. There's a few dashboards. There's one in the background. If a foreman is using a computer, there's a foreman's dashboard, cost dashboard. This is my manager's homepage production dashboard. This gives you, a full look at every job that's, active jobs by project manager, best performing, worst, largest, and smallest. So what we've become is a trending tool that really sits beside your accounting system to give you day-by-day visibility that really accounting systems can't give you, and gives you the ability to get into this information in a meaningful way that the field folks like to see. So if I want to look at this job, why is it about to fall off the edge? I can get into it. I can get into the worst possible scopes of work, and it's in a look and a feel that the guys can jump into any scope of work, no matter how short, and see if there's anything they can do to turn things around. Well, folks, that is B2W Track. Again, an analytical tool that gives the guys in the field an easy way to collect their data, customizable so that you can decide what types of information that you want them to collect, error checking, approval status, export to accounting, and then lots of reporting both in job. There's even cross-job reports in the background as well. Well, I want to thank you for spending some time with me today, and please let us know if you have any questions at all.